Hello guys, today we'll be discussing our topic about movement of materials in and out of the cell, and there are three ways by which materials move in and out of cell, which is diffusion, active transport, and osmosis. So we'll be discussing diffusion first. Diffusion is where the particles net movement is of particles or materials from a region of higher concentration to a region of low concentration region. So for example, this is a cell and the dots are carbon dioxide, and this carbon dioxide is moving out of the cell because when aerobic respiration happens, carbon dioxide is produced, and this carbon dioxide causes is required to be moved out of the cell. So this carbon dioxide is moving out of the cell by diffusion, and some of the carbon dioxide is coming in, which doesn't follow diffusion, but this is a diffusion where higher concentration region carbon dioxide, more higher concentration region, is moving out of cell to a low concentration region. So this carbon dioxide molecules will move out of the cell into the open area because it has to follow diffusion, and diffusion's main, or I should say definition is moving particle from a higher concentration region to a lower concentration region from a or from a down a concentration region is an another definition. Then we will talk about the factors affecting the rate of diffusion. Concentration gradient. The rate of diffusion increases as the concentration gradient is greater, meaning there are more particles in one side and less in one side. So this means that when the amount of carbon dioxide in this side is, for example, take this as the number of carbon dioxide molecules here is 100, and the number of carbon dioxide molecules here is 10. So the rate of diffusion is high, but the rate of diffusion would become greater when the number of molecules is like 500 and the number of molecules here is 2. So as the difference is greater, the rate of diffusion also increases. So concentration gradient increasing causes diffusion, rate of diffusion I should say, to increase. The difference here is around 90 and here it is 498. So the concentration gradient for this one is greater, so the rate of diffusion is greater in this below example, this one. And then the surface area to volume ratio. As a larger surface area in proportion to volume will increase the rate of diffusion, or greater surface area increases the rate of diffusion. So just for example, this is cell and unicellular cell, and the volume ratio is like, the volume ratio is lower. It's something, ratio of surface area to volume of this cell is around 24, and there's another cell which has this one as 2. So this surface is greater, this is surface, and it is greater, this is the nucleus. The surface area is greater and it covers most of the volume. So as the volume is less than the surface area, it will allow more particles to come in a faster rate than this cell, because it has to cover more volume and it has less surface area to cover it. So this one, the higher ratio would increase the rate of diffusion. So by this example we understand that the higher volume and surface area ratio, higher the rate of diffusion. So that's the side surface area to volume ratio increases rate of diffusion also increases. And then we have the distance. The rate of diffusion increases as the distance of the surface is less. So this is a cell and this is another cell, and the material is here and the material is here. So it will be easier for this to move into the cell quicker and faster than this one, because it is the distance is less and the rate of diffusion is increased as the material's distance is closer to the surface of the cell, because it has to cover less distance in a lesser and would require lesser time to cover it. And for this one it will require more, it has to cover more distance in this example and will require more time. So this would cause the rate of diffusion to decrease in this example. And as to continue, it means that decrease in distance increases rate of diffusion. And then temperature, the rate of the rate of diffusion is greater at higher temperature. So for example, for this example we will take the cell itself as an example. At first it has 30 Celsius temperature, and then you have 45 Celsius temperature. The kinetic energy of the particles at 30 Celsius would be lesser than the kinetic energy created by 45 Celsius, because the energy is given more and the particles will move faster at this temperature, because the higher temperature gives out more kinetic energy and the lesser temperature gives out less kinetic energy. So the particles will move slowly at this temperature and will move faster at this temperature. So it means that as the temperature increases, the rate of diffusion also increases. Then we have active transport. Sometimes the cell needs to take in a substance when there is very little of that substance outside the cell. In other words, against a concentration gradient. So for example, we have a perfect example for this in the kidney tubules, but there will be a long example. To make it shorter, this cell like this, and this cell has less water, has less oxygen in it, and outside it has more. For example, just take the kidney tubules example. The kidney tubules usually have less glucose in it, so they have to take more. They have to take up more glucose, as glucose is important for our respiration process. So this is the kidney tubule and there is our vein. So there is glucose in our kidney tubule and there is no glucose here, and it cannot move by diffusion because it's a bigger particle and it would have to move against the concentration gradient. It has more here and it has less here. Sorry, again my mistake. So it has to move the glucose into the vein, and this glucose is moved by using active transport method. So it can do this by, during active transport, a cell uses energy from respiration to take up substances. Rather, like a pump uses energy to move a liquid from one place to another. So it has energy created, heat energy, kinetic energy, any energy created by respiration, and the vein would use this as energy from respiration to take up glucose from kidney tubules, and the glucose will move into the vein or into the blood as active transport takes place, and active transport takes place and the glucose moves against and the glucose moves against the concentration gradient, which allows us to have active transfer to be done, as the energy from respiration is used up to do this. And then we have osmosis. Water moves across cell membranes by a special sort of diffusion called osmosis. So diffusion and is equal to osmosis, but osmosis is in the sense of water and diffusion is in the sense of other and any material. So osmosis happens only with water, and this happens with any material or gas or liquid, but it doesn't happen with water. So osmosis obeys the same rule of diffusion, but it happens when the total it happens, so the same definition would be applied, that water that osmosis only happens when the water when there's a higher concentration of water molecules to a lower concentration of water molecules, which means it moves down a concentration gradient. So for example, we will put this as from a solution dilute solution by replacing higher concentration to a concentrated solution, which would make it easy to understand osmosis. And then we have water moving from the membrane, the cell membrane, and usually plant cells, for example, is a plant cell and there is a cell membrane, there is a cell wall. Cell wall is freely permeable. In the first video I say it is freely permeable, and then the inner cell, the cell membrane, is partially permeable. So osmosis only happens to a partially permeable layer, and it only can pass through this. So the definition of osmosis is the movement of water molecules from a higher concentration region of water molecules to a lower concentration region to low of water molecules through a partial permeable membrane, or else we can say the movement of water molecules from a concentrated solution to from a dilute solution to a concentration solution through a partially permeable membrane is known as osmosis. Thank you for watching this video and hope you like it, and